This video is going to show the remote project submission process for submitting your projects on the Onyx server. This version of the video is going to show you how to do so on Windows. If you're running a Mac, go check out the videos that I created on Mac. So what I have set up to start to demo this process for you is an Eclipse project for a hypothetical P0. P0 in my course is writing Hello World, and the project also includes a README. This submission process can be used in any course. Even though I am showing Eclipse and Java, you can use this even if you're running Python or C#, whatever code you're writing. If your project or if your course requires submission on Onyx, you just have to somehow copy your source files over to the server. So if you are in Eclipse, the first step that I would say is to locate where your project files are on your Windows machine. If I'm in Eclipse, I like to right-click on the project name in the Package Explorer and go down to Properties, and it will show me the location right here. So on my Windows machine, my Eclipse workspace is in C:/user/Marissa/Eclipse workspace-demo/P0 Hello World. So I could navigate there manually, or I can click this little button over here to show it in the System Explorer. So if I click on that, it will pop open the File Explorer in Windows, and it'll take me right to that folder. So if I double click on the folder, I can see all of the files that are inside of that Eclipse project directory. Now you will notice it does have the .class files, the .project, .class path. We don't want to submit any of those files, so when we copy these over to Onyx, our files, we only want to copy the source or the source files and the README. So let's show that process how we copy them. I like to use a tool called MobaXterm. So I'm going to close or minimize Eclipse, and jump over to my desktop. I'm not going to show how to install MobaXterm in this video. There are resources for that, but if you just search for MobaXterm and download the personal edition, it should be a pretty straightforward install because there's an installer that comes packaged in that download. So once you get that installed on Windows, if I run the program, I will be shown a screen like this. I have the ability to create new sessions and save sessions. There are all kinds of tools here that may actually be helpful in other courses. For example, I can tunnel through, set up tunnels, things like that. But for our purposes, we're just going to create a new session. So if I click Start a new remote session, it'll launch this screen right here. We want to connect to Onyx using SSH, so Secure Shell. It's the first option. If I click on that, I need to put in the remote host, a username, and we're going to always use port 22. So the remote host to connect to Onyx is onyx.boisestate.edu. I'm going to check specify username, so I don't have to type it in every time I launch this, and I'm going to type in my username, which is Marissa Schmidt. Yours is going to be your Boise State username, so typically your first name followed by your last name, and leave it at port 22. If we go look at the advanced SSH settings, I'm going to leave X11 forwarding on. That allows us to launch graphical programs, which is going to be slow typically. So I don't usually launch graphical programs, but I keep it checked just in case. We shouldn't have to check anything else. Terminal settings, you can change some of those if you find that you need to. We don't need to change network, and we don't need to change bookmark. So if I click OK, that creates this session over here under Saved Sessions. And now when I launch, it's going to ask for my password, just like it would if I am sitting down at one of the terminals on the computer. So this would be my Boise State password. One thing that I know can throw people off is it won't show the password characters as you're typing. This is for security reasons. If somebody's looking over your shoulder, you don't want them to know how long your password is, because then maybe they could guess it more easily. So just keep typing, it is entering your password. But be careful, don't enter your password incorrectly more than 3 times because you will be locked out of the server temporarily. So I'm not going to save my password just for security, but if you feel comfortable, you can. I usually don't store them, but up to you. So I'm going to say no. Okay, and I am logged into Onyx over here on the terminal. So I can see just this exact same message that I would see when I log in from one of the computers. On the left-hand side, there's this graphical file explorer that I can use to drag and drop between my host machine or my Windows machine and the Onyx server. So if I scroll down in here, I can see all of my files that I have on Onyx right now, which is pretty cool. So let's do this. I'm going to split my screen so that I have on my left-hand side my File Explorer on my Windows machine, and on my right-hand side I have the File Explorer for Onyx. So my goal, now that I'm going to be submitting these files that I've been working on my own machine, I need to copy them over into a folder on Onyx. And since I already have a CS121 folder on my Onyx server because I'm currently teaching that class, I'm going to call my class that I'm submitting this project for, this hypothetical project, CS100, just so that I don't have two of the same folders on my Onyx. But if you're in CS121, you would create a folder called CS121. If you're in CS221, create a folder called CS221. The way that you can easily create a new folder in MOBA Xterm is to either click on this Create New Directory, or I believe you can right-click inside of here, maybe not. So we'll just click this button to create a new directory, and I'm going to type in CS100. Okay, and so now I just created that new folder. This new folder is on Onyx. Inside of that folder, if I double click, I need to create a Project 0 folder that I'm going to copy my files into. So I'll do the same process. Right click, now I can right click because there's no existing files. I can click New Directory, or I can click that button up there. And I'm going to call this P0. And I double click, and now I am inside of that folder. Once I'm in that folder, I can just go back to my Windows host machine, select the files that I want to copy over, and drag and drop them right into that window. So this makes it really easy if you're not very comfortable with the command line. It's just a convenient way to copy files back and forth without having to use the command line. So now that I've copied them over into that folder, I need to still, speaking of the command line, you still probably have to use the command line because your instructors usually want you to test your code on Onyx from the command line. So over on the right-hand side, this pane is a console. So if I type ls, it'll show me all the folders on Onyx. And you can see I have that CS100 folder that I just created through the graphical interface. So if I cd CS100 ls, I have the P0 folder, cd P0 ls, and inside of here now I have my Java files. So because I'm going to be a good student, I'm going to test these from the command line as my instructor suggests. So I'll javac hello world.java. It compiles, awesome. That means at least something went right when I copied my code over. And I'm going to run it just to make sure that it's the file that I expect. So make sure you didn't copy over a broken version, or maybe if your network was spotty, it might not have copied the whole file. So this just does a double check. Awesome, my program runs as expected. I'm also going to check the contents of my README using the cat command. So cat will just print the contents of a file. Cat README. And it did print out the contents of my README file. Again, this is just to double check to ensure that I copied the correct version over. So now if I type ls, I can see when I compiled it created the .class file. So at this point, after you test, make sure to delete all of the files that your instructor does not want you to submit. There'll be a list of that in your project specification. So I'm going to rm star.class. That will remove the generated .class file. And now I'm ready to go. In my folder, I have hello world.java and readme. Now is the time that you want to use the submit command provided by your instructor. Look in your project specification. Do not use the command I'm using here because it's not going to match up with what your instructor wants. Don't just change the class name and the project name because they may have named it something completely different. So if I go over to this slide here, I can see that the P0 hello world submit command from my instructor that was in my project write-up is submit Marissa Schmidt CS121 space P0. You need to use spaces where your instructor puts spaces. You need to use capitalization exactly as shown in the project submission command. You can't do capital CS 121 if in the write-up it's specified as lowercase CS 121. So just be super mindful, super careful that you are typing the command in correctly. So let's go back over to my terminal in MOVA Xterm. I'm going to type the clear command just to bring us back to the top here. And I'm going to run from within my folder. So you have to run the command inside of the folder that contains your files. I'm going to say submit Marissa Schmidt space CS121 space P0. Enter. Then it's going to ask me, I'm going to be collecting all the files from this folder right here. Make sure it's the right one. Make sure it is. Then hit enter to continue. Here are the files that will be submitted. It will even tell you we submitted all of these files right here. It lists them out. So in my case, it submitted ./readme./helloworld.java. The / just shows the current directory. You don't worry about it. That'll be in the list, but the files that are being submitted are readme and helloworld.java. And it will tell you, it'll give you a confirmation that submission of programming assignment P0 is now complete. You may want to take a screenshot of this just so that you can, if something does go weird in the process, you have some sort of proof. It may not be the actual proof. I mean, you'd have to discuss it with your instructor, but sometimes I know it just gives students confidence to have a screenshot of this right here. If you get that completion message, you're good to go. Your project has been submitted. That's all you have to do. I just want to show you what it would look like if it did not work. So I'm going to create an error in the submit command. I'm going to say submit space Marissa Schmidt space CS121 space capital P0. In the project write-up, it said to use lowercase p0. If I hit enter, it'll give me the same message at first. So if I press enter to continue, it's going to say error while creating your submission archive. Your submission did not succeed. The tar command failed. Contact your instructor. This did not make it over to your instructor. You're not done submitting your code. You have to figure this error out. Otherwise, your submission will either be not accepted or late, depending on the policy for the course. Before contacting your instructor, I would say double check the command that you're using. 9 out of 10 times, this error is caused by a typo in the instructor's name, using capital letters instead of lowercase letters, using the wrong course name. So just double check that before reaching out to your instructor, because typically that's the feedback that we're going to give you. We're going to say, go check, make sure your command was correct. And that is all I have for submitting on Windows. If you run into any issues or have any problems, contact the tutors, the learning assistants, the graduate assistants, and of course, definitely your instructor for the course to get clarification on this process or help setting this up. We're here to help. We want you to succeed. That's it. Have a great day.